wide neck.
And there was actually a 15. That's, like I said, that's the one that's in the pictures. So
This car,
very cool.
The cars were actually prepared. They were never alike at any event. They had different numbers. They had different paint schemes. They had different sponsor schemes. So this car is as it was for 12 hours in Sebring in 1965.
All right. Man, that is just such a cool car. And what motor are you running in it?
The original cars ran 289 hypos.
That seems funny.
Box stock 289 hypo motor had, you know, a couple hundred horsepower, maybe 275 horsepower or something like that.
Right.
But they were still so much faster than anything else.
Well, what's funny is they put 427s in the little one, right?
Well, the 427 was the 427 Roadster was never approved FIF. It was never approved to race in Europe.
Right.
So all of the Cobra race cars that were running for a championship were small block cars.
Huh.
They were the FIA cars, the comp cars. They all had 289s in them.
What made the 427 so popular then?
Well, the 427, the old 289 cars had the buggy spring type suspension on the front and the rear.
Right.
Which meant you had a sideways mounted leaf spring with the shocks out on the end. I guess what was cool about the 427 car, supposedly it was the first car that was ever designed utilizing a computer. Now, I don't know what kind of computer they had, okay? But the biggest difference, except for the motor, between the 427 cars and the small block cars was the 427 cars were independent. They were all independent suspension, but the 427 cars had coilovers on each corner.
Cool.
Okay, so that was cutting edge in 1965. Okay?
But I mean, it wasn't a car that was raced, so it didn't get famous that way. How did
raced.
people even? I mean, were they just selling to the public and they said?
Yeah, I mean, it was sold because it was so radical. It
Sure.
was so bizarre.
Yeah, I understand hot rodding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me the biggest you got.
Yeah, I mean, you know, used to, if you wanted a car like this, you had to. I mean, if you wanted a car that had a lot of power and no weight, you had to build it yourself.
Right.
You know? And so when Ford Motor Company started selling them for Shelby, I mean, that was a pretty radical concept. You know?
Right.
The most radical thing they had up to that point was, of course, the exotic stuff from Europe.
Right.
But all we had here was, you know, we had the T-Bird for a little while, you know, and then we had the Corvette.
Right.
You know? And the Corvette really has always been somewhat of almost a sports car, almost a luxury car.
Right.
You know.
Sure.
And so what comes along with that's weight.
Right.
You know, you'll be hard pressed to find a Corvette, except for the Grand Sports that they built just to race, that's less than 3,000 pounds.
Right.
So the cheapest horsepower in the world is no weight.
Right.
You know, and so you know, the Corvettes in the late 50s and early 60s in the SCCA, the club racing in the United States, Corvettes won everything.
Sure.
You know, even the old hard axle, you know, big coilover springs, you know. So when the Cobra came along with a 289 in it, or actually a 260 at first, I think the first one had like a 229 or something. It was even a smaller version of the small block Ford motor.
Wow.
But they had such a weight advantage, and they were so nimble that they ran away and hid. You know, a lot of times they would tell the drivers, even at Milan's racing the coupes, they would tell the drivers to drop their RPM levels at least 1,000 RPMs, and they were still blowing everybody away. You know, at turning 5,000 RPMs instead of 6.
Right,
you know?
right.
And then I remember reading a story.
So they were sandbagging the whole time.
Yeah, one of them blew a motor. I mean, one of them lost a piston one time. I don't know if they dropped a valve or whatever. And of course, the motor was about to shake apart, so they brought it in. They took the oil pan off. They pulled the rod and the piston out the bottom of the motor, took the spark plug out, put the oil pan back on, and they went out and raced it with 7 cylinders, and the motor stayed together until the car finished the race. But to answer your original question, I wanted a motor that looked like a 289 hypo.
Right.
But I wanted more motor. So that's a 1970 302 block, which dimensionally is the same size as a 289, but inside it's bigger.
It's got bigger holes.
We bored and stroked it to a 347, put AFR aluminum heads on it, put all the old valve covers and everything on it. So the motor looks like a 289 hypo. with 48 IDA Weber carburetors.
Right.
And it's actually about a 500 horsepower 302 that's been stretched out to a 347. So
How much torque?
I don't know. I didn't
Never
know.
dyno.
You know, it's just it's steel rod, steel cranks, got roller rockers, 11-to-1 compression ratio. We run racing fuel in it. It's stout.
Cool. All right, folks, we're going to take a break here, and I'm going to have him open up the hood so we can look at that engine he's talking about. And believe it or not, Tony's agreed to take me for a ride in it. So I'm sitting here the whole time. I can't wait to get to that. I can't believe that I'm going to get the opportunity to ride in this car. But anyways, this should be really cool. Stick around.